Everything looked completely normal. It wasn't. They had been warned about the dog before Iris arrived. Not maliciously. Just the kind of well-meaning concern that gets repeated in parenting groups and pediatrician waiting rooms. 100-pound Bernese Mountain Dog is a lot of animal for a household with a newborn. Too much mass. Too unpredictable. Think about it carefully. They thought about it carefully. Then they kept Bruno. He was 6 years old, tri-colored, slow-moving in the way that large, gentle dogs move when they have nothing to prove. He had lived with Simone and Peter Hartwell since he was 8 weeks old, and he had adapted to every change in that house with the same calm, deliberateness. The renovations, the new furniture, the baby shower guests who filled the living room and smelled strange. When Iris came home, he sniffed the car seat from 1 foot away and then walked to his bed and lay down. He did not approach her. He did not retreat. He simply waited, the way he waited for most things. For the first 7 months, his behavior was unremarkable. He moved around Iris. He kept a respectful distance when she was on the playmat. He was exactly what everyone had hoped. A large, well-adjusted dog could be around a new baby. Present, calm, undemanding. Then the landlord had the kitchen renovated. New countertops, a new range, new gas line connections behind the wall. The work took 2 days. The crew finished on a Thursday, and the kitchen smelled like plaster and caulk, and the specific chemical sharpness of new fittings for about a day, afterward, which Simone had expected. By Saturday, the smell was gone. By Saturday afternoon, Bruno had taken up a position in front of the kitchen wall that he did not leave. He stood between the playmat where Iris sat and the section of new drywall where the line ran, facing the wall, not barking. Not growling, just oriented toward it, mass low, nose working. Iris looked up at him from the playmat with the wide-open interest that 9-month-olds bring to large stationary objects, and made a sound of surprise. Bruno did not turn around. Simone called him. He looked at her and did not come. She called again. He walked to her, stood for 4 seconds, and went back to his position in front of the wall. Peter said, "What is he doing?" Simone said she didn't know. She had been reading about territorial behavior in large breeds around new family members, and this fits some of the descriptions. The wall was in the baby's sightline. Maybe he was blocking her from something visual he perceived as a threat. Maybe the renovation smell was still registering in a way they couldn't detect. She redirected him. He let her. He went to his bed. 20 minutes later, he was back in front of the wall. That night, while Iris slept and Simone and Peter watched television, Bruno sat in the kitchen doorway facing the renovated wall section with a stillness that was so total and so unlike his usual settled evening sprawl that Peter finally said out loud to nobody, "That is very weird. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one." Sunday morning, same position, same orientation. Bruno between the playmat and the wall, nose lifted at the drywall level, barely moving. Simone called the landlord. Not because she was certain something was wrong, but because the dog had been behaving consistently and with intention for 36 hours in a way that had no obvious social explanation. And she had run out of behavioral frameworks that made sense of it, she said. "I know this sounds unusual, but our dog has been fixated on the kitchen wall near the new gas line since Saturday. I'd like someone to check the connection." The technician who came Monday morning was named Gerald Ferris, and he had worked for the gas company for 18 years. He brought a combustible gas detector. He ran it along the baseboard near the new fitting. The device registered a reading of 400 parts per million of methane within the first 40 seconds. The fitting had been improperly sealed, not catastrophically, not immediately dangerous at that concentration in a ventilated space, but continuous, building, and in a home with a crawling infant who spent time on a floor mat, 6 feet from the source, a worsening situation. Gerald Ferris checked the reading twice. He said quietly to Peter, "How long has your dog been doing this? Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard." Peter said, "Since Saturday afternoon, the day after the crew finished." Gerald said nothing for a moment. He wrote in his report later that the dog had been alerting to a gas leak within hours of its occurrence, before any human detectable symptom, before any concentration that would have triggered the carbon monoxide detector in the hallway, and that had the leak continued building over the following days. The outcome in a household with an infant on the floor would have been a much more serious conversation. The fitting was replaced. The line was retested to code. Gerald left a card and told them to call if anything else felt wrong. Bruno spent Monday evening lying in the kitchen doorway, as he usually did, not against the wall, not blocking anything, just in his normal evening location, because the normal evening location was his again. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Simone thinks about the Sunday she almost didn't call. The moment when she stood in the kitchen watching Bruno positioned in front of that section of wall and thought, "This is probably territorial behavior, and I'm probably overthinking it." The moment she almost chose the explanation that required nothing of her over the one that required a phone call. She made the call because the dog had been consistent for 36 hours, and consistency, in her experience, means something. Iris is 10 months old now. She pulls herself to standing, using the kitchen cabinets, which are 6 feet from where the fitting was. She does not know what the dog was doing that weekend. She does not know that the wall she reaches toward sometimes was the wall Bruno stood between her and for 2 full days in November. Bruno knows, or at least, he knows the air is right again. He sleeps in the kitchen doorway in the evenings, the same position he's always used, because that is simply where he fits and where he has always been. And because there is nothing now in the direction of the wall that tells him otherwise. The next story is about a dog who started sleeping at the foot of a hospital bed 3 weeks before anyone knew there was a reason to be there. Stay with us.